Hello and welcome back to the chess website. Today I'm going to show you the Alien Gambit, which has been a new and popular opening against the Caro-Kann. So after e4, black plays c6, and their idea is to play d5 in the center. White takes that center by playing d4, getting those two pawns. Black plays d5, and then here, any knight move here works as long as it moves either to d2 or c3 in order to protect this e4 pawn. And then once that happens, black almost always takes on e4, and white recaptures with the knight. And then in this position, which is reached a ton of times, millions and millions of games here, black plays knight to f6. So here, black can also play bishop to f5. And this is also kind of worth noting. After bishop to f5, if you still wanted to play the Alien Gambit, you could look into playing knight to g5, but it's not going to have the same effect because when you take on f7, black is just better prepared to counter this premature sacrifice. So knight to f6 is what it's really good against. And after this, knight to g5, and black falls into the trap by playing h6. Now, this technically is not a bad move or anything, but it becomes very tricky and difficult for black to play after this move. So after h6, the Alien Gambit is knight takes f7, sacrificing a full knight on move 6. Just trying to draw this king out into the open, out of its comfort and safety there on e8. And once it takes on f7, I should note that you actually cannot take. I should note that you actually cannot ignore this because it is forking the queen and the rook. So black is pretty much forced to capture that knight. And after king takes f7, white should play knight to f3. Now, it might be tempting to throw in this check with bishop c4 right away, but knight to f3 is actually a little bit stronger because we reserve the option of bringing the knight to e5 first, drawing the king back, and then maybe going for bishop to c4. So anyway, after knight to f3, this is kind of like the starting position of the Alien Gambit. Here, there's a lot of branching points, a lot of different things that black can do here. But first, let's get this out of the way. 41% of players in this position blunder and play bishop to g4. A really, really bad move because you have to pay attention to where your king is. If it was on e8, it wouldn't be a blunder. But because it's on f7, that allows for this knight fork. Knight e5 simply forks that king and bishop. So even though that knight is pinned, this is check. So that takes priority. And white is going to win that bishop on g4 because we've got two attackers and there's only one defender. All right, so bishop g4 played a ton, but terrible. Really, really bad. Just loses the piece right back, and this king is going to be stuck in the center. White's going to have a pawn to the good, so just not a great move, bishop to g4. So instead, there's a lot of other tries that black can go for. One of them would be bishop to f5, bring the bishop one square closer where it's actually not stepping into this fork now. And after this, white will throw in this knight to e5 check. This is, again, the idea of bringing the knight to f3 first. And then after king to g8, we play bishop c4 check. So I mentioned this idea, but now that the king is further away, now that it's tucked away on g8, it's not protecting this e6 square. So that kind of gives us an idea and a target because in this position, black almost always plays e6 and blocks this diagonal. So this bishop is protecting e6, so they think they're okay. But in this position, white has g4, a really nice idea which removes this defender. This bishop is defending that e6 pawn, and it's the only piece doing it. So if we can kick this bishop away, then we can take on e6 and dislodge this king even further, win a pawn, and continue our menacing attack. So after bishop to e4, getting their bishop out of this attack, we play bishop takes e6 check, and then the king has to go to h7, and now we really want to get on this diagonal. If we could bring our queen on this diagonal, we would be very close to checkmating. So here, white's best move is to play f3. And after f3, black is in a very bad situation because it looks like the only real way to save this bishop is to move it either to g6 or to d5, and both don't really work because queen to d3 check comes, and that's game over. You would have to give up a piece, and your king is still in hot water after doing so. So white is completely winning here. So after bishop f5, white can get some ideas by playing knight e5 check, bishop c4, and then trying to kick this bishop around and undefend that e6 pawn. So bishop f5 is still a little dangerous, but it's better than bishop to g4. So let's go on to knight b to d7. This is the second most common move here. And after this, white should play bishop c4 check, because now knight e5 check doesn't have as much power because black can simply snap that knight off, trade queens, and then all of a sudden, when you trade queens, your king becomes a lot safer because the queen is a very powerful attacking piece. So if they're off the board, your king is in a lot less danger. So bishop c4 check is played instead, since we stopped knight e5 with knight b to d7. And now after e6, white's idea is just going to be to develop and follow the opening principles very quickly. So white castles. After bishop d6, white plays a rook to e1, and white has a really nice uh, positioning of their pieces. Their rook and their bishop converge on this e6 square. They're already castled. Their king is completely safe, and they're one piece away from almost completing their development. So white is doing really well with their development. They are still down a piece, but they still have consistent pressure against this king. So white has some compensation for that piece. After rook to e8, white can try this move, knight to e5 check. And now that we brought this rook to e1, this is more supported, and they've got two pieces in the way, so they can't quite trade queens. So after they were to take on e5, we can recapture with the pawn. The knight moves, and white has this devious trick of playing queen to h5. And here, a move like g6 would weaken this h6 pawn, so that wouldn't be great. And then king back to g8 actually runs into bishop takes h6. A really, really nice move. White wants to get another piece into the attack and do it quickly. So they take on h6, sacrifice another piece, because if black recaptures, what white can do is check, and then if the king goes in the corner, for example, they can check again and bring their rook into the game. It's all about bringing more attackers than your opponent has defenders. So if we get this rook to g4, that's going to be checkmate very soon. So very, very nasty double piece sacrifice that white can try to pull off with bishop takes h6. So, I mean, a lot of black's options look pretty dangerous. And if black is super accurate, they can avoid a lot of these tricks and traps that white has. But, in a faster time control, if you were playing this in Blitz, it would be very difficult to solve these problems that white is giving us. So what I think, if you are a Caro-Kann player, or you're looking for a way to play against this opening, I would recommend playing c5. So the reason we play c5 is we want to bring this knight to c6 now. And we're obviously okay with trading queens because, just like I mentioned before, our king is very weak. So if we can trade queens, our king will be much safer. So that's kind of the idea with c5. And in response, white usually plays bishop to c4 check. And then, like usual, we block with e6. The knight goes to e5 check. This is their whole idea. We're letting them get what they want. But now white's attack kind of stalls out. If they were to, for example, castle, we could play queen takes d4. And we're doing very well here because, again, if they trade queens, that's exactly what we want. And our king becomes much safer. And then if they do something different, maybe like c3, just trying to support this d4 pawn, we're just going to bring our knight into the game. Again, trades help us, right? We're up a piece. If we trade down, that one piece becomes a lot more. If we trade down, that extra piece becomes a lot more valuable. So white tries to avoid the trades by playing knight to g6, attacking our rook. But what's great is we don't have to do anything about that. We're up material, so we can afford to give it back and just take on d4. And if white takes on h8, we just recapture. And if we take stock of this position, white has played a gambit, right? Like they sacrificed a piece and everything, and really tried to open up our king. But our king is perfectly safe on h8. It's tucked away in the corner. It's got these two pieces that are potential defenders of that king. It's perfectly safe. Whereas white's king is still in the center. It's still not doing great. Granted, white could castle this turn, but my point still stands. We have better development. We've got our two knights out. We can play e5, have better control of the center, and we've kind of castled by hand. We moved our king into the corner like we would have if we had castled. So, if we think about the opening principles, we have better development, better control of the center, and our king is safer. So black is much, much better here. And even though we gave some material back, this is a dream position for black. We've got two pieces for the rook. We're on material. We've got everything we could want in a position. So this is how I would recommend to refute the Alien Gambit. Play c5, and then tuck your king in the corner and challenge this knight with knight to c6. Again, we want trades. Trades favor us because we want our king to get safer and get rid of white's attacking pieces. So thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions down in the comments below.